Hello everybody, it's your boy Proftrof, and we're back here on the video. Okay, we're doing some history today. Okay, how Rus survived Mongols and Crusaders. Rise of Novgorod. Novgorod?
In the mid-13th century, the land that had once been the mighty Kievan Rus was a smouldering husk, its cities and villages burnt down, its people slaughtered under a hail of Mongol arrows. However, one of them, the oldest Rus city, Novgorod the Great, was a world away from the devastation. Its walls still stood firm, the bells of the Nereditsa church still tolled, and its streets were abustle with lively commerce. In this video, we will explore how a free republic caught between Mongol hordes to the east and Catholic Crusaders to the west would scheme, bargain, and fight to survive. It's really weird that so many common-day topics remain taboo, so we're happy to say that—
No more, man, please. I've seen too many ball shaving apps for one life, okay?
Mongol era.
I'm sorry,
As you may recall from our previous episodes, Novgorod was the original capital of the Rus, founded by Rurik around 860. Even after Rurik's successor Oleg moved the capital to Kiev, Novgorod remained influential. The people of Novgorod had always been free-willed, so when the Kievan Rus began splintering in the early 12th century, the old northern capital emerged as one of the most dynamic independent powers. Novgorod ruled over a prosperous trading empire, with the city itself serving as a central hub of international commerce. This Novgorodian state had a unique system of government, as it was not a hereditary monarchy, but a republic since 1136, when the powerful merchant lords of Novgorod, backed by the general citizenry, overthrew Prince Vsevolod of Pskov. Legislative power in Novgorod was controlled by the Vircha, a form of public assembly consisting of nobles, clergy, merchants and commoners. Novgorod still had a prince, but he had to be elected by the council and could be fired if necessary. That is not to say that the Novgorodian princes became meaningless figureheads. In fact, a particular prince would soon emerge as one of medieval Rus's greatest military leaders, and to many, the savior of the Rus culture and faith. In the year 1220, a boy known as Alexander was born to the Vsevolodovich dynasty, who ruled Peroslavl, and later Vladimir. The young princeling likely spent his childhood years learning to fight and lead men. It was probably due to this pedigree that in 1236 his father dropped him off in Novgorod, and the city council elected him to be their prince, beseeching the young noble to take charge of the city's military affairs. This was an incredibly tall order for a 16-year-old, as the city—
why my boy looking like a fucking model? Jesus Christ.
It was in crisis. To the east, the unstoppable horde of Batu Khan was thundering across the Rus heartland, and it would only be a matter of time before the Mongols would come to Novgorod. In the west, the situation was just as volatile, as starting in the 12th century, various Latin Christian powers had made headways into northern Europe. The Vikings of Scandinavia abandoned their old gods by the mid-1100s and became more or less Christianized, which allowed them to expand under the pretext of Holy Crusade. The Kingdom of Sweden, in particular, began making ingresses into Finland, claiming it was converting the pagans of the region to Christianity, and by 1216, the Pope had recognized Swedish suzerainty over Finland. This expansion put Sweden on a collision course with Novgorod, who had economic and territorial interests in Karelia. The Catholic and Orthodox churches had finally begun to overlap in the north. Both sides desired land and power and considered the other to be heretics, so the potential for war was brewing. According to the Chronicle of Novgorod, in the summer of 1240, a Swedish army led by Bishop of Finland Thomas sailed up the Gulf of Finland in their longboats. They then proceeded into the Neva River with the aim of seizing control.
Thomas, what are you doing here, Thomas? This is not your land, Thomas. Fuck off, Thomas.
Over Lake Ladoga,
Bishop
and
Thomas.
from there, striking at the city of Novgorod itself. As the story goes, Prince Alexander wasted no time in rallying his Druzhina and confronting the Swedish host on the Neva,
Druzhina.
decisively routing the western invaders.
Oof.
It should be noted that the battle at the Neva is never described in Swedish sources, and this has led some scholars to question if the battle at the Neva even happened in the first place. However, most agree it was likely an impromptu border skirmish rather than a full-scale invasion.
Okay.
Whatever the case, the young Prince Alexander had won his first military victory at the age of 19 and received his first sobriquet, Nevsky. Alexander's success
At what age did he become a prince?
had
won the
made him
battle
some
at
enemies
19.
as well, particularly the boyars and merchants of Novgorod, who believed that his war jeopardized the delicate trade relations in the region. Soon, the political situation deteriorated to the point where Nevsky and his soldiers left the city. This was bad timing indeed, for the Swedes were not the only Catholics who had ambitions to take Novgorod territory. It is now we move our focus south to the dense forests of the Baltic Rim. Much like Finland and Karelia, this region was one of the last holdouts of paganism in Europe. The ancestors of the modern Lithuanians, Latvians and Estonians had been fighting a losing war against German and Danish invaders who sought to convert them to Latin Christianity by force. By 1228, much of the Baltic shore had been subdued by German Catholics, except for the Estonian coast, which became Danish. This land became known as Terra Mariana, the land of the Virgin Mary. It was an unstable colonial frontier, divided into several bishoprics, directly sworn to the Pope in Rome, but still inhabited by Baltic peoples who continued to resist Catholic overlordship through guerrilla warfare. Throughout all this turmoil, a pair of knightly orders rose as the apex predators of the northeast. In Latvia and its environs, the Livonian Brothers of the Sword were dominant. At the same time, directly to their south, the Teutonic Order waged a bloody crusade.
So, from playing medieval to Total War, I knew that the Teutonic Order was here somewhere. I wasn't exactly sure where. So I wasn't sure if it was here or here.
Against the pagans
It's
of old Prussia, establishing control over the region. However, the balance of power was soon to shift. In 1236, with the backing of the papacy, the Brothers of the Sword launched an expedition across the Daugava River to subdue and convert the Lithuanians. However, Lithuanian tribes took advantage of the swampy forests of their homeland, ambushed the knights, and annihilated their invasion force. So crushing was this defeat to the Brothers of the Sword that their remaining members had to join the Teutonic Order, now rebranded as
Brothers of the Sword, more like bitches of the sword. Sorry.
the Livonian Order. They quickly rebuilt themselves into a powerful, autonomous chapter of the Teutons, and this allowed them to wage a more effective war upon the indigenous pagans. By 1240, the Livonian Knights had established firm control on land as far east as Lake Peipus, and they now neighboured the Novgorod Republic. Once more, Catholic and Orthodox spheres of influence crashed together in northern Europe. The Council of Novgorod was initially divided on how to deal with the ever-encroaching Crusaders. Initially, Slavic merchants prospered as trading partners with the Germans and Scandinavians, and intermarriage between the Rus and newcomer nobility was not uncommon. These ties to the west had been why Nevsky was forced into exile after his victory at the Neva. After all, what merchant would allow a glory-seeking prince to chase off their best customers? However, relations between West and East had begun to sour from 1224, when the Livonian Knights took Tartu, a city that Novgorod considered to be within its political orbit. The Crusaders also ramped up their efforts to convince the Novgorod aristocracy to convert to Latin Christianity, which irritated the Slavs, for whom their orthodoxy was the heart of their society. As diplomacy deteriorated, the German knights began to gaze greedily at the wealth of Novgorod, which in their eyes was a fair target as non-Catholics. Around the year 1240, Pope Gregory IX finally authorized a crusade against Novgorod, hoping that the Republic would be too preoccupied dealing with the Mongols to the east to defend. That same year, the Livonian Knights stormed the outpost of Koporye, conquering it with little resistance. They established a permanent garrison and began the construction of a stone castle, which made it evident to the people of Novgorod that the knights had come to conquer. Now in crisis mode, the Vichar of Novgorod turned back to the prince they had just exiled.
And they're like, hey brah, you know how we exiled you like a couple years ago? Hey, it was a joke. It was a joke. You took it too seriously. We meant for you to go outside, chill out for like a day or two and come back, brother. Nothing serious, no hard feelings, alright?
Begging him to return. Nevsky obliged, making haste for the northern capital. By the time he arrived, the Crusaders had taken Novgorod's sister city and breadbasket, Pskov. In the hands of an occupying force, it was a dagger pointed at the heart of the capital itself. Alexander knew that he had not a moment to waste, and in the autumn of 1241, he struck back, storming Koporye's brand new castle and capturing it swiftly. In the spring of 1242, he joined with the forces of his brother Andrei and thundered into Pskov, retaking the city with little effort, likely because the Teutonic Knights were preoccupied fighting the Mongols in Hungary at the time.
That is fucking hilarious. So the Pope calls the crusade now to grab Novgorod because they should be busy with the Mongols. And yet they get destroyed. Well, they lose a couple battles because they themselves are busy with the Mongols. What?
Nevsky's swift military successes can likely be attributed to his Druzhina, the archetypal elite warrior retinue that had been a staple of Rus princes for centuries. Nevsky's force travelled light, taking towns and castles before their crusader enemy had a chance to respond, a manner of warfare akin to his pagan ancestor Sviatoslav the Snow Leopard 3 centuries prior. Following these successes, Nevsky mustered up a citizen militia to supplement his Druzhina's limited numbers, and launched an offensive raid into Catholic Estonia, breaking his army off into contingents to raid and pillage the countryside. This was a mistake, for he had overextended his forces, and the Teutons and their Estonian allies managed to ambush and destroy one of the Rus raiding parties in an ambush on a river crossing southwest of Tartu. Nevsky decided to cut his losses and orchestrated a careful retreat. Meanwhile, the Crusaders had been hastily assembling an army for a second invasion into Rus lands. Led by Bishop Herman of Dorpat, it consisted of a core
Bishop Herman
of knights, alongside an allied contingent of Danish soldiers
and
native Baltic auxiliaries. By spring, they had begun pursuing Nevsky's army northwards. In April of 1242, the opposing armies met upon the frozen surface of Lake Peipus. Novgorod forces numbered some 5,000, while the Crusader alliance totaled at around 2,600. The Catholics may have been outnumbered, but it was Nevsky who was outgunned. Apart from the Prince's Druzhina and a contingent of allied Turkic horse archers, the Rus army was predominantly the poorly equipped, poorly trained militia raised from Novgorod's general citizenry. Furthermore, the Crusader...
That's not good, but that's still 5k people to 2k people. That's more than double.
Army had something the Rus did not: heavy cavalry. Nevsky was direly aware of the fact that in the hands of a capable commander, a single deadly charge from a few hundred mounted knights could rout his entire army in minutes. Nevertheless, against all the odds, the Novgorod militia held the line against the couched lances of the Black Cross, allowing Nevsky to successfully pull off a pincer move with his horse archer and Druzhina units, driving the knights and their allies off the field. The day had been seized by the East Slavs. This conflict, later immortalized as the Battle on the Ice, was a watershed moment in the relationship between medieval Rus and Catholic Europe. A permanent border between Novgorod and the Crusader states was established along Lake Peipus and the Neva River, and never again would the Teutons or their allies make serious ingress into Rus territories. For his victory, Alexander Nevsky earned immortality, known by all future generations of East Slavs as a saint who saved Orthodox Christianity. Now let us move back to the east and address the Chinggisid-shaped elephant in the room. While all this Crusader business had been happening, the Mongols had been ravaging their way through the northeastern Rus principalities. Nevsky's solution for the Mongol problem was simple: surrender. While other Rus cities mounted futile resistance against Batu Khan, Nevsky instead sent envoys, preemptively capitulating before the Mongols even reached his city, and accepting the Chinggisid Khans as his lawful overlords. Because Novgorod had surrendered so quickly and willingly, it was spared the destruction that other influential Rus cities were subjected to.
Hey,
why was Nevsky?
They must have seen that even if the Mongols could conquer everything, they cannot hold it. They must have seen that shit. They must have seen that, like, once this dude dies, everything's gonna go like as it usually goes with the Mongols. Everything's gonna fall apart. Everything's gonna be free again. Everything's gonna, split
so
apart.
willing to capitulate to the Mongols, but so insistent on fighting the Crusaders tooth and nail? The answer was simple. To those who showed proper obedience, the Mongols ruled with a light touch. They had no interest in influencing their subjects' religion, culture, or prevailing system of government, so long as they paid tribute without issue, and allowed the Mongol Khans to confirm their leaders. Contrast this to the Crusaders, who had every intention of forcefully eradicating Orthodox Christianity, and one can begin to see why the Novgorodians preferred a steppe warlord to a German bishop. Nevsky spent the rest of his life as a loyal vassal of the great Khan, making many trips to the Mongol capitals of Sarai and Karakorum to pay his respects. The ruler of Novgorod used his submission to the Mongols as a key to political advancement. Indeed, the Mongol Khan bestowed upon him the title of Grand Prince of Kiev in 1246.
Grand Prince of Kiev.
Of course, in the aftermath of the Mongol conquests, Kiev was a shell of its former self, but the title itself still held significant symbolic power and gave him an edge over other Rus princes who now competed for the Khan's favor. Alexander would only continue to grow more and more influential under the Mongols' wing. In 1252, his brother Andrei reigned as the Prince of Vladimir. However, when Khan Monkur ascended as ruler of the Mongol Empire, Andrei refused to travel to Karakorum to...
Andrei, what are you doing, Andrei? You're fucking up the plans, Andrei. Andrejka, what are you doing?
Have his princeship confirmed. As a result, the Golden Horde launched a punitive expedition into Vladimir, chasing Andrei out of his lands and forcing him into exile in Sweden. In his place, Nevsky was confirmed as the Mongol-appointed Prince of Vladimir as a reward for his continued loyalty.
One, Sasha.
Nevsky paid off the confidence the Mongols showed him in dividends, defending their authority whenever the need arose. In 1259, when the citizenry of Novgorod revolted and refused to pay tribute to the Khans, Nevsky marched into the city with soldiers, forcing his own people to obey their Mongol masters by force.
The people almost fucked it up for everybody.
Of arms. Nevsky died in 1263, taken by illness while journeying home from one of his trips to pay homage to the Khan in Sarai. The Rus he left behind was a complex one. On one hand, invaders from the west were defeated, their religion saved in the process. On the other, it had been utterly ravaged by the Mongols, becoming subjects of a foreign empire. The legacies of St. Olga, Vladimir the Great and Yaroslav the Wise remained in the form of their faith, culture and identity that they had helped build. But as the various Rus princes slowly reconsolidated their lands and power under the watchful eye of Mongol overlordship, it became clear that the age of the Kievan Rus was long behind them, and a new era had begun in what would become Russia.
Ruski.
We'll
Okay,
continue this series in the coming months, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links in the description to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our Discord and much more.
Okay, what do you guys think? We're gonna be doing more history things on the channel for sure. Okay, so what do you guys think? Which video should we check out next? Let me know. Medieval history, pre-medieval history, whatever you want. I'm down for everything. As long as it has war, blood, tears, sweat in it, I'm down for it. No politician, please. That shit boring as fuck. Battles, that's cool. Okay, quick thank you to everyone that supported the channel. Pedro Martinez, Kumas, Queen, Rob Bear, Swasteg, Future 53, Senior Hilton, Lemon and Moon, Ike Dash, Ironic, Nada James Bizon, Ryuga Hideki 25, Michael Museo, Nicola Georgiev, Shorty, thank you all for the support. As I said in the other videos, I'm gonna say it in all of the videos today. I made some emotes for the channel, so that if you're a member, you can use the emotes, and we have new member badges. So if you post something in the channel, you get a badge. While being a member, you'll have a badge next to your name. Okay, so you get to be extra cool. Anyway, if you want to learn more about the membership, links in the description. You know, the usual stuff. Everything's in the description. Anyway, hope y'all enjoyed this. I'll check you next time, buddy. Have a nice day.